Good evening, Razorback fans. Welcome to the one, the only Hog Talk podcast, live from the Sterling Soap and Roastery Studios. We're a part of the Believe and Buzz Radio networks, where you can hear us on all podcast platforms, as well as Buzz to 106.7 in Central Arkansas. So please like, rate, and review our podcast. And all live shows are presented to you by Arkansas Brewing Company in downtown Ozark. I am Porter Hayes, and alongside me is Adam Hall. And we're also brought to you by Bet Online. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting on your favorite casino and card games, available to play from your phone. Head to the website or use your mobile to sign up today and get on the action. Remember to use the promo code BLEV for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. We head over to the Mariners hotline, bring in Coach Mike Neighbors of the women's basketball team. Always a pleasure having you on. And we recently went to Europe to play in Croatia and Greece. And kind of just give us a quick rundown of how that trip went, how the players loved being over in Europe and playing in that environment and some of the courts and the places you got to see.
Yeah, the chance to see a player get their passport stamped for the first time and that whole experience, it's really cool to get to see it through their eyes. The first time they are in a foreign country, and just to do it all together. We had the 10 days lead up, which was awesome for us to build a really good base to head over there. The travel went amazing. We started out there in Split, Croatia, which I grew up, when I was growing up, Croatia was in a war, and I had no idea that the country was that beautiful, and it was other parts than what we used to see on the news. So very historic, a lot of great places in Split and in Dubrovnik. Got to play a couple of games while we were in Croatia, and then headed to Athens for another game and 4 other days of touring around and seeing the ancient sites, and again getting to experience that with some of our players, some of whom didn't realize that Greek mythology was a real thing. It was just something they were told about in school. They didn't realize it really happened. So to be able to be together that long, we certainly forged some relationships. We came back, everybody healthy, nobody injured. Everybody got lots of playing time. We got to do a lot of lineups. And, as a coach and as a staff, when you put one of these things together, it's all you can hope for.
And I think leading up to the trip, one of your players had to make sure that Italy was in fact in Europe. So, you got to throw that in there. But let's talking about, the NCAA allowing you these 10 practices. How crucial was that with this type of roster that, to be honest, there's not many players that have left, but it feels like a totally, completely different team with the freshman one that can contribute right away, the return of Sasha, and then, of course, your transfer players with Carly. Just talk about the importance that you were able to get an advantage on those 10 practices and those 3 games.
Well, we have a lot of information, a lot of usable data, a lot of film to be able to teach from that, without the NCAA allowing these things every now and then, we would have been without that. We thought the timing was right with the number of returners we had and the impact freshmen we had coming in, that we have that information ahead of time so that we can be a little bit more strategic in how we plan our practices, how we execute our practices here for the next 3 weeks now that we're back, heading into the preseason championship segment. So I was really worried that the NCAA might take advantage of COVID and just say, hey, we're not going to do these things anymore. But I think everybody that goes on these understands the cultural experience, and that's the main reason we do these things. The practices are bonus for coaches and players to get a chance to know each other. But we had a chance to play some unique lineups. I mean, we had one lineup where we had a guard in there and everybody else was 6'3" or better. Had Saylor, Jenna, Merriam, and Jersey in there together, and that was quite a tall lineup. Then we threw Sasha in there with that lineup and rotated the guards a little bit. Then we went small and played 4 guards and 1 big. So got a chance to see a lot of different combinations, a lot of usable film coming back for coaches to look at and better prepare for how to use individual workouts these next 3 weeks. And again, like I said, the biggest part is taking the kids to see all the historic sites and explain to them, how that fits into history, because it doesn't really sink in, until you're standing in the Temple of Zeus that was there, before time was even being recorded. To explain that to those kids, that's how old these buildings are and some of the ruins that they saw. But to see it through their eyes is an amazing thing for coaches, and just to hear them talk about it on the way home and follow them through their pictures and hearing them talk about it's very rewarding. And we're very thankful that our school allows us to do it, and the NCAA does too.
And you got something?
Yeah, so like going over to Europe, how is that, getting the Hog brand out there, getting your brand out there, help with the recruiting aspect of it? Because, we had the commitment while y'all are over there. How do y'all use that to your advantage?
Well, just to make sure the kids understand that's how invested our program is.
Mm-hmm.
Not every school takes advantage of that rule. They're not funded well enough, and maybe that's not that big of a priority, but I think it's an easy thing for recruits to look at and see that your school is invested in women's basketball, to be able to take a trip like this. And, we played in the gym where Giannis grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And just to see our kids respond to that. And I had a couple of Greek agents that have professional teams over there asking about our players. Hey, I know this girl's only a sophomore, but we're going to start tracking on her. And this girl's a senior. We'd love to talk to her at the end of the year. So the impact that it has, you can measure it a little bit right now, but some of that impact is down the line for our players who were being able to be seen by these coaches that have professional leagues over there.
Yeah, and talk about, international players. Usually you see a lot of Australian players in the JUCO level. You don't really – I mean, there's been a few with Sabali, coming out of Brazil to Oregon, but the resurgence of the – you see it with the FIBA 3-on-3, and you're seeing a lot more international players, and you going over, and not only have you – when you talk about your players on your roster getting to play in their home state, you've made it well known to go to their state and let them play in their home state. How does that really help you when it comes to recruiting? That, hey, we have the opportunity to now play overseas, or your girls get to go home during the summer and really make it a part of a personal deal, like you do with, say, like Mac and what you did with Aaron and everybody going down to Texas and playing.
Yeah. It's, I think for the kids to see that they'll have the opportunity not only to be seen on TV, but an opportunity maybe one time in their 4-year career to come play in their hometown. The overseas things, you have to – I think that's more for them national teams. Those kids being able to play for a university over here helps them with their national teams when they go home. We're seeing that with Christina. Christina was able to join us over there, but since she hadn't been on campus yet, she wasn't able to play. But she came back with us, traveled back with us, has had a few days here on campus with us, and now she'll return to play in the 3v3 over there in Hungary. She leaves again tomorrow. So, the game has gone worldwide. We got in a great conversation with our coaches about the NBA team that if the Yugoslavian country had never broken up, put a team of Luka and Jokic and all of those guys together, that what would have been the former Yugoslavian team, they could compete on the national level. So the game is worldwide, and I think it's important that we, continue to do our part growing it.
And moving on to your team this year, and I'll tell you, I was really surprised by the timing, and I want a two-part question on this press. You decided to go on the press, but I was really honestly taken aback that you mentioned it when you did preseason before you even went to Europe. I thought, well, maybe he would keep that a little bit vetted until closer to SEC time or league play. What went into your decision to try the press, and what went into your decision to be like, just lay it out there like, hey, we're going to just tell right up from the jump, we're going to be doing press?
Well, I've always been a fan of it. growing up watching Coach Richardson's teams play, I've always been a fan of it. I've never really been convinced that you can do it against the absolute best teams in the country, and I'm still not sure you can. But the way the net works, the net ranking, your ability to beat teams badly impacts your net. And sitting back and watching that happen across the country last year, specifically in our league, LSU just going out and pummeling people in the preseason, even though they weren't playing quality competition necessarily, their margin of defeat led them to, the number 2 net before they ever even played anybody in the top 50. So that was the first thing. Then, one of my mentors is Kevin McGuff, and he at Ohio State, I saw him implement it with their team. And I knew we were going to have similar type teams. We're going to have a really deep team. A lot of players can come in and contribute. So I think depth is something that we've never really had. And I knew we were going to have that with this particular team. So we started talking it all summer long. Every time I was with Kevin, we talked about the ins and outs of it and things you needed to have. And I felt like we had the right personnel to do it. And it was a good time to do it. And then the mentioning part of it, Porter, it simply comes down to this. I knew that if I said it out loud, that it would force me to do it.
Yeah.
If I didn't say it out loud and say it to you guys in the media press conference, I would always have an out like, well, maybe I changed my mind. Well, like we weren't 5 minutes into practice and Grant Hall was at one of our practices going, hey, are y'all going to press or not? And I'm like, damn, Grant, we're 5 minutes into practice. Can we stretch a little bit?
Yeah.
But it's a part of the game that I do think, if you've got a deep team and you've got a long team with a rim protector, which we finally have, with some athleticism, I think it's good to have it. The other part about mentioning it early is I think it kind of steals some people's practice time. Anybody that plays us in the preseason is going to have to work on their press offense a little bit, knowing whether we're going to play it or we're not going to play it. And it's fun. I think our kids really enjoyed it. You saw that first game. The competition wasn't SEC caliber, but the energy in which our kids were denying the inbounds pass and jumping into passing lanes and looking for deflections. I think it's an exciting style to watch. It kind of goes hand in hand with how we play offensively. So we'll see. It'll still be a work in progress. I mean, you're never going to press South Carolina effectively because they're going to have good enough guards. But, if it helps us pick up 5 to 10 net ranking points along the way and maybe helps us win a game or two, then it'll be time well spent.
How does coming up with the season getting ready for some of the position changes with your players that you've had? I've seen and heard about, Jersey working more in the post and some of the movement, how the players adapted to some of the changes.
Well, Jersey's still not going to be a post player. She is going to run at the rim. She's one of our fastest players.
Mm-hmm.
The last couple of years, we've kind of slowed things down a little bit for our standards because we really didn't have a rim runner. She's really taken that role on. If y'all come and watch her play, you'll see too that, the weight room, she finally had that summer where she was able to put on positive strength. She looks completely different. Y'all will see that immediately when you see her. But yeah, there's been some tactical changes, moving Sailor around a little bit. Sasha coming back obviously gives you a very versatile type of attacker. And then a stretch 4 like Jenna Lawrence, who was our leading scorer and rebounder on the trip. And then another dynamic guard, kind of a combination of Mac and Sam together and Talia Scott. But then, you mentioned Carly Keats briefly there, Porter. But, this is a kid who comes in with 1 year of college experience, 3 years of eligibility remaining. And, man, when you watch her play, you think she's a senior already. She's just really got a poise about her and a calmness about her game. And, man, just shoots it in the mid-range and from the arc and can get to the rim. So we've got, some people that will be in new spots, but it'll still look familiar. I think anybody that's been following us, they will notice a lot of things similar, but maybe some people tactically in some different spots.
Yeah, 3 of them I really want to highlight real quick. You talk about Talia. Yeah, she does remind me of a freshman version of what Mac was as a freshman. and Samara was as a freshman. And I've told this to many people. Keats, if you put Amber Ramirez and Tolfree together,
that
is who Keats reminds me of. She has that swagger, she has that drive, but she can also shoot the three. I mean, it just a sniper. When you talk about a sniper, but a dual threat guard. And I'll tell you what, watching her play, she steps off the court and then she smiles. Like when she's on the court, it's business.
Oh, yeah.
That is one of them that you pick up on, that like Kobe-esque mentality of she's all business on the court. And then when she steps off, goes get a drink of Gatorade, then she'll kind of open up a little bit.
Yeah, fans are going to love her. She's exactly as you describe her. Her emotions are hard to determine. You're not going to know whether we're up 20 or down 20 by looking at her face. I think that comes back from, her upbringing and the way that she's been raised, her support system, and then going the junior college route. Jones, you mentioned, Tolfree, that's where she played. We were able to dip back into that relationship with Coach Miller back there. And obviously Pauline's in their Hall of Fame as well. So I'm glad that we were able to see her when we did, because a lot of people saw her late at the national tournament. And luckily we already had her committed and signed before a lot of the people who hadn't been to Jones seen her. So I think fans are going to love her. We're excited to have her for 3 full years. That's for sure.
Well, and another thing that I just, stood out to me at practice was one, Jenna Lawrence, just how impactful she was. Her shot is just pure. And I was joking with Grant, you put a little bit more blonde in her hair and you wouldn't be able to tell her and Sailor apart.
Yeah.
I mean, the body style, how they shoot. And then the next point is, Sasha Britt coming back has already made a huge impact on Sailor. Watching them bang back and forth and the competitiveness between those two, that's going to do nothing but make each one of them better. And knowing that sometimes when they're not on the court at the same time, that's going to add keep a lot of pressure away from them, because there's a lot of times where Sailor would get in foul trouble and she would be timid the rest of the game. Now she don't have that on her shoulders anymore.
Yeah, you're right. Nobody's going to have to be looking over their shoulder when it comes to that. There's always going to be somebody ready to go. They have really challenged each other. It was funny, those 10 practices we had, I think we were about 8 practices in before we put them on the same team. So they were having to constantly guard each other. We're obviously going to play them together some too. So we did that finally toward the end of camp there. But, it's go to Jenna first. She was just very she's been so well schooled at Farmington with Coach Johnson. They run the same system we do. So Jenna's transition has been seamless. She's been running this system for 2 years. She took shots that she could make. She went 7 out of 14 on the trip from the 3-point line and led us in rebounding as well. So she gives you another dimension of size and power and ability to stretch the floor. Sasha was so efficient. If you look at like plus minus and offensive rating efficiencies, her efficiencies were off the chart. She just continues to take it one day at a time. Her approach is so fun to watch. She really appreciates the game, has a new look about her, knowing what she learned last year. But I think when you talk about all these new people, and then you start thinking about a little bit of role changes for a little bit of everybody else. Like, there were times over there that we had Mac and Sam, and they weren't the two bringing the ball up the floor. It was Keats or Talia, and there hadn't been a game played in the last 5 years, certainly the last 2 years, that the ball wasn't in one of their hands.
Yeah.
So now they can play off the ball a little bit and be the catch and shoot kid. Mac hit 3 straight threes against the professional team that we played out of Montenegro, a team that finished runner-up last year in their Euro Cup division. It was a close game early on, and Mac just came in and banged 3 straight threes off catch and shoots on passes from Talia. So the other thing that won't ever get mentioned, it doesn't show up in a stat sheet, but Talia Scott took 5 charges in 3 games, and she had 3 others that should have been charges, I think. You don't see very many freshmen ready to defend and willing to defend. and is, has acclaimed as her offense is, I would tell you that our coaching staff came back. I mean, I texted her grassroots program coach and said, man, I watched her play all summer, and I never once realized she was this good a defender.
Yeah.
And he said, hey, I think it's what she does best. So,
well, she showed us that in the McDonald's All-American game. She took a charge of the McDonald's All-American game. So it's like,
yeah, you don't see that. You don't see that very often. So we're going to be a fun team. We've got a real challenging schedule. We knew we were going to have a good team, so we put a challenging schedule out there. We won't be perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think we'll be really, really fun. I think our non-conference will prepare us for a really rugged SEC that will most likely have 3 top 8 teams in the preseason. South Carolina, LSU, South Carolina, Tennessee, I think are going to be in the top 8 when those polls start coming out. So you got to be challenged, you got to be ready, and I think that all started on this trip.
And that was a thing. You look at last year's team and just the fall off from, you're looking at that SEC schedule, and a lot of people, some really don't pay that much attention to the women's game and how deep the SEC is. And it attributes to the depth of your team last year and that brutal stretch that you had. And of course, that heartbreaking loss against Ole Miss, being up and let them come back. How much of this depth is really going to be a difference that people's going to realize when it comes down to the SEC play and you go through those 2-3 game stretches on the road, that they're going to be able to withstand those tough tests. And they might not win all of them, but there's going to be a big difference when they look at the depth of this team.
Well, depth is the last thing a program adds when you're in a rebuild. When we got here, we were picked dead last in the SEC, and you don't automatically come in and attract depth. You attract a few good players. You get some pieces, but you're never going to have depth until you've gone out and been in the postseason. We've been 5 straight years now. There's only 2 other teams in the SEC that can say that, and that's South Carolina and Tennessee. So when you have sustained success, and I know people will argue about what success is and is not. That's fine. I'm here for it. But the fact that only 3 teams in the SEC have been in the postseason the last 5 years shows you these recruits see that, and now they know that the thing to take that next step from being in the conversation for the NCAA tournament to winning games in it is depth, because that shows up every day in practice. How hard you have to go every day in practice to either earn your spot or keep your spot, and just the standard that it raises everybody up to. I'll tell you this, I don't have them doing anything mandatory right now, and that gym's been full every day because those kids don't want to lose what they gained in this preparation. So depth to me is the last piece that any program that's trying to build it the right way, like we have to, not just come in and be a flash in the pan, but build it for sustained success. Depth is the last piece, and I'm really excited that we've got that. It's going to be new for us. We haven't had a roster as deep as we have of players, I think, that can compete at the SEC level. So it'll be a new look. It'll change a little bit of the way we play. The basics will still be the same, but that's that last little piece that we can add to trying to catch the top half of our league.
And we'll end it on this, just the fact, like with Michaela, that what she wants to do for her legacy at Arkansas. You look at Dungy, you got Tolfrey, you got Ramirez. Now it's Mac's turn to really cement her legacy. How much of importance do you think she's putting on this year of, all right, this is my last shot? And then, of course, you look at Sam and the rest of the team really have her back, and they're wanting to do the same for her and send her out as one of the greats. How important do you think that is? If you was to give them true serum, how important do you think that is? She wants to go out as one of the greats that we've mentioned.
Well, she's already won more SEC games than any player in Razorback history. So she's already accomplished that in 4 years. I know we haven't won an NCAA tournament game. That's what anybody's always going to come back with. I know. I get it. Some of her teams didn't have the opportunity that the past teams have to play at home and play under normal circumstances. So I'll defend her to that point. But she's won more SEC games than anybody in history. So her legacy's set. I think she can really cement a potential Hall of Honor type career if we do win. And I'll tell you this: we were designing some T-shirts for each kid to make, and I just saw hers today. All it says is, "I just want to win." That's what it said.
Yeah.
So it's ironic you mentioned that. And that's what seniors do. A lot of times, freshmen want to play, sophomores want to score, all those sayings you see going around on Twitter. She wants to win. And I don't know how much of it's legacy and how much of it is just she wants to finish what she started when she came here. And for her teammates to rally around, like we were over there and the referee asked for the captain, and we hadn't even talked about it. And they all automatically said, Mac. So, this is her team. I think in the past she's had a role in it, but I think it's undisputed when it comes to this year.
And before we end, we got a user question, fan question, and they're wanting to know, what does the post play look like this year?
Well, it's bigger. Miriam is fully healthy. We've got her around the basket. Emery is back and fully healthy as well. She had a little battle last year, but she's back and fully healthy. And, Jersey can go in there and play should we need her to. There's nothing wrong with Saylor and Christina Sanchez in there. Sanchez is a post player as well. So you'll see a presence, I think, probably more defensively than anything with Miriam's ability to block shots. We saw that a little bit last year, and we saw some flashes of that. She's had a full summer of it. So, post play is one of those really unique things. There's not very many post players in the country. So when you have one, it can really be an advantage. And I think not only do we have one, but we've got a couple of kids that we can count on when it comes SEC time.
Well, Coach, as always, it's a pleasure to have you on, talk about the season, talk about the team, and really kind of get an extra look at you this year because you got to go to Europe and give us a chance to really come check out this team. And I have to say, one of the most anticipated teams you've had.
I agree.
Your season tickets prove that. Your schedule proves that. And really looking forward to seeing y'all when y'all kick practice back up.
You bet. We'll see you in September. Thanks so much.
Yes, sir.
Coach.
You got it.
Well, that was Coach Neighbors previewing the season and talking about their European tour, which, again, like I said, this is going to be one of the most anticipated seasons. There's, when it comes to what we've talked about before, this is a year that they have the depth. This is a year that they got some proving to do, and you got to win. And it's just like he said on that shirt, all I want to do is win. And I think they have to do that when it comes not only to the SEC tournament, but, Adam, they got to get that win in the NCAA tournament as well.
Yeah, and I think getting the European run out there puts them out. It gets you talking about them a lot earlier than you might normally, which I think is a positive. It's a good thing. It's going to be on people's minds leading up to the season.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break. After the break, we are going to do our discussion. Jackson Collier posted a very good question out there that I want to try to do like a daily video, topic of the day. And, when we talk about Coach Pittman and this season, what would you grade him 1 through 10? We're going to give our thoughts, and if we agree, disagree, right after the break. Attention DIYers, home improvement enthusiasts. Are you searching for the right tools and the supplies to tackle your next project? Look no further than Mentor's Hardware Store. With locations in Ozark, Alma, and Clarksville, our vast selection of hardware and building materials is sure to have everything you need, whether you're fixing a leaky faucet or building a new deck. Plus, our knowledgeable staff is always on hand to offer expert advice and guidance. And with our competitive prices and convenient online ordering, Mentor's Hardware Store is your one-stop shop for all your DIY needs. Visit us today, and let's build something amazing together. Are you looking for a place to grab a cold drink and some delicious food? Look no further than Arkansas Brewing Company. Located at 201 South 1st Street in beautiful downtown Ozark, our establishment offers a wide selection of craft beers and tasty eats. But what sets us apart is our welcoming atmosphere and friendly staff. At Arkansas Brewing Company, you'll always feel like part of the family. So visit Destiny and Christopher Brockett and staff today and see for yourself what makes us the go-to spot for locals and visitors alike. Arkansas Brewing Company. Come for the drinks and stay for the friends. Are you in need of legal representation? Look no further than the law offices of Robertson, Beasley, Shipley, and Robinson. As the oldest law firm in the River Valley, we have been serving our clients for over 100 years, with locations in Ozark, Fort Smith, and Springfield. Our experienced team of attorneys provide expert guidance and advocacy in a wide range of legal areas, including personal injury, family law, criminal defense, and more. Trust in our history and experience to get the results you deserve. Contact the law offices of Robertson, Beasley, Shipley, and Robinson today at 479-782-8813. That's 479-782-8813. Searching for premium brewery products that will take your daily routine to the next level? Look no further than Sterling Soap Company. Our handmade soaps, aftershaves, and balms are made with only the finest ingredients that give you the ultimate grooming experience. With a variety of scents to choose from, there's something for everyone. Plus, our products are crafted in small batches to ensure the highest level of quality. So why wait? Visit www.sterlingsoap.com or visit our retail store at 16 West Walnut Street in Paris, Arkansas. Shop our collection and discover the difference for yourself. Upgrade your grooming routine with Sterling Soap Company. And want to welcome you back to the Hog Talk podcast. And we were posed this question by Jackson Collier, rating the job of Sam Pittman so far and giving him a grade of 1 to 10. He gave him an 8, and there was a lot of discussion over it. There was a lot of, agreements. There was a lot of, 5s and 6s. Adam, I want to start with you and what you thought of when you seen this question, and we talked about possibly discussing it on the show. We're talking about his tenure as a whole. What would you give him when it comes to number? Agree, or would you go lower?
I would go just a touch lower. I'm at around a 7. I think a lot of that stems from last season. There was a lot of expectations or hopes after the 9-win season prior. And there was a bit of a letdown finishing 7 and 6. I look at his recruiting classes, which, got better since he's came in year by year. I think last year they finished at 22nd, or 2022, they finished 22nd. And I know right now for 24, we're sitting at about the 20th in the country in the recruiting class. So, I'm looking at all of those. And, it's just, you came from a complete dumpster fire. So what he's been able to do is absolutely amazing. But as of right now, I'm keeping it right around a 7.
And I'm agreeing with Jackson when he says an 8, because, a lot of everybody's negativity is from what happened last year with Liberty and, how, they got beat. But you got to use that same argument if you want to go to the 9-win season, because you can't sit there and tell me that last year's team was better than the team the year before. The team that went 9 wins in Treylon Burks, and you look at that team and what they had, you had somebody to throw to, you had a running game, you had a good quarterback. You lost a lot of depth, and I think a lot of people don't realize the talent and the continuity that was on defense that you lost from the year before to last year, and it showed. And then you lose Jalen Catalon, at the beginning of the year, which, really hurt everything, because you've seen your linebackers out there every year were playing with a hurt shoulder. Grant Morgan, playing busted up, Bumper Pool playing busted up, But I look at what he's done, because it's easy to say, well, you lost to Liberty and you had all these games where you lost to Missouri. I understand all that. But we also still got to remember it's a lot harder to rebuild a football program than it is a basketball program. Mm-hmm. When you're getting in the portal, you can't really guarantee that those guys are going to be a hit. But he's continuously reaping from the portal, and he's getting more guys to come here. But you look at what he's done, and since what has he had? You look at the 2 and 10 win seasons. You look at the non-SEC wins. You look at everything that he's been able to overcome, and if not overcoming one of the worst programs in Power 5 history, the way Arkansas was after John L. and Chad Morris, you got to give that same credit. And that's why I agree with an 8, because this dude has had to overcome a lot of stuff when it comes to getting this program where it is today. Now, did they fall off? Yes. Did they lose some games that they should have won? Yes, exactly. But I still give him an 8, because look at the fact that he keeps on nailing what we talked about a few weeks ago of his perception of him.
Mm-hmm.
He's listening. He still jokes and talks about the cold beer, but he said it today in the Little Rock Touchdown Club. You know, he was tired. He's tired of being the nice guy. Everybody sees him as, you know, just this old country boy who likes cold beer. And he tells them, you know, well, what do you want me to be? You know, and he talks about being tougher on the kids. So the fact right there that he has owned the fact that, all right, I see what you're saying. I'm going to own that, and I'm going to do better. And look what he's done with the hires that he's made. He upgraded, honestly, when it comes to the OC and defensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. Yes, Ronalds is a very good offensive mind, but he was one foot in the door, 1 foot out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I agree. I'm not going to go any more above that, but you got to give the man credit of what he's done with what he had when he got here.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I look at it. I mean, I think once you get below a 7, because I did read several of the comments out there, I think you're being a little bit too cynical, or maybe your expectations were just way too high.
Yeah.
For what he was going to do coming in. So, you know, that 7, that 8 range, I think is a good spot. Now, if you put the pieces together on, you know, if you had, and I know we can always say, if we had beat Liberty, if we had beat Missouri, this wouldn't even be, you know, up for debate in reality, because it'd been another 9-win season. But, you know, it's one of those, I'm ready for him to put those pieces together. And I think they'll finally, and I hate to say finally, it's only been, 4 years, but finally put that together this season with what we discussed with the 8-9-1 season that we've both got.
Yeah, but, you know, when we talked to Coach Neighbors, you see what he had to say about finally having that piece of depth. You know, you finally have that missing piece of what's going to get you through the SEC. And no matter how you can cut up the schedule, you know, home, away. Now we're going to non-divisions. I mean, it's still the SEC, and it's going to be just as tough as ever. I mean, this is if you really want to go into this non-divisional SEC next year, and you've got to replace your quarterback. I mean, this is going to be the opportune time to really take advantage of. All right, you said you had, you know, issues of, well, maybe I was too nice on the guys, and we replaced our coordinators. I think a lot of this will change people's minds, whether he wins or loses, on how I know that we're at 6 or a 7 or an 8, but I'm telling you, this is going to be a year where this could move him up to an 8 or a 9, or in a lot of people's eyes, a 9, or it could drop people down to, you know, a 6 or a 7, depending on how this year plays out. But I'm just telling you, with everything that I've been hearing out of all the assistants and watching Souders, you know, getting these guys in shape and watching them run up and down the bleachers and really seeing these guys getting stronger and faster, like we mentioned, you know, the other night, that's where I want to start buying into, okay, this team is going to be better than they were last year. Also, when Coach Pittman gets up there and owns, you got to lead by example. When he owns that, hey, maybe I need to change how I do things, he didn't have to say that publicly.
No, he didn't.
And for him to do that shows a lot about his true character, and I think that's going to spread like wildfire through the team.
Yeah, and I think we'll see. I mean, honestly, when it comes to, you know, game time, we'll see. We've all seen him on the sidelines when it comes to ref and the players and whatnot, but we'll see how it is firsthand come September 2nd, just because, you know, he is always fired up on the sidelines. But I'm ready for it. I think that he is truly a man of his word in what he's saying on changing how he's perceived.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that is too, that's going to fall on the shoulders of these coordinators, because this isn't, Dan Enos' first rodeo. You know, he's coming into a situation. He's a well-known, well-rounded, well-seasoned OC. So, and he's familiar with the system. So this should be a seamless transition of you've got the players, you've got tight ends, you got receivers, and you have your dual threat quarterback, just like he had at Maryland, to really come in. It shouldn't be, other than the terminology, shouldn't be too much different from what he wants to do out of his players. And we're talking about depth and having the running backs that you do. And hell, even having the quarterbacks that you have and having Criswell, you've seen that 6-yard in the wind throw he did. He's dual threat. You know, one of those guys, he gets to come back and play in his home state. We don't know what kind of charge that has on him. You know, you're going to get some of these guys. I was listening to Tom Murphy this morning on the radio, and he was just talking about, you know, the wide receivers. There's 5 or 6 guys that can line up at the slot or out wide. You have your tight ends. You've got your running backs. They are turning into some freaks on both sides of the ball. And Tom Murphy's not a guy that sugarcoats anything. I mean, he tells it as it has, you know, as it is on what he sees. And when you hear a guy like Tom say those things, positive things about this team and what he's seeing, it checks out of what Dan Enos says when they don't have to sit there and go over stuff from the previous day. They can just go on to the next day.
Yeah. You know, Dan Enos and Sam Pittman have been around this. I think I think you touched on Sunday, they both have something to prove here at Arkansas. I think they both left previously with, I'm not going to say a bad taste in there, but on terms that they wish they hadn't. Yes. They wish things had turned out better. And I think this is their do-over, if you will, to do things their way.
Yeah. And that's, again, it's going to show. And what's funny is like the correlation with what Coach Neighbors was talking about in the net. I go back to those BCS days when we're talking about what Arkansas needs to do. And we talked about that Sunday. Arkansas needs to go out and win these games handily in the first half, just like they was in the BCS where you're having to run up points to get ahead in the BCS standing. That way you get your guys in and get these people on the line depth, you know, because we talk about the defense in these 3rd and longs, or what we call 3rd and Odoms. You start getting that depth, you're going to start getting these 3rd down stops. You're going to start getting your offense on the field more. And I think that's going to be another thing that people haven't really talked about from the defensive side of the ball is we're going to start seeing a lot more 3rd down stops. And I posed the question the other day about the sacks, and I did it on purpose. Arkansas had I think they led the SEC in sacks last year, but we're looking at a different defense and we're looking at a different, you know, talent wise, and they're running the front. That's why it was almost like a trick question of, do you think they will get sacks knowing that they led the SEC? But does that mean that it's going to come from the defensive line this year? You know, that's kind of what I was going at with it.
Yeah. Cause I mean, we didn't see that push from the line last year. You know, that was basically all linebackers, some defensive end, but I think this year I think we are going to be pleasantly surprised with what Deke puts on the field. And I think with the coordinators coming in on defense, I mean, you know, we've all heard what different coverages that they're going to run, or, you know, going to the 4 front versus 3 front, and they're going to mix things up here and there. But I think that the different points of view that we're going to see it's going to be refreshing, but not something we're used to from Arkansas, or at least we haven't been used to in a while.
Well, and knowing that other teams aren't going to know what you're going to be throwing at them, I think that's going to be a huge advantage of they got to prepare for everything. They're actually going to make adjustments, and it's not going to be halftime adjustments. It's going to be in-game adjustments. You know, they're going to be bringing different sets, different looks. And you look at all the successful college, and a lot of times in college, you look at the different types of how you can disguise a blitz and disguise pressure. If they can get that down and really get your too deep disguise looks and really throw a quarterback off when he thinks it's zone and you're running man, vice versa, or you think the rush is coming from the left side and it comes from the middle or the right, either way around, that is what's going to be those little intangibles that is really going to wreak havoc on other teams, because they don't know what you're going to be running. You could be in a 4 set and then drop back to a 3, run up into a 4, or then bring pressure from different ways. And that's why I liked Brent Venables when as a defense, because he just always confused you
Mhm.
where you didn't know, and you got All-Americans all over the defensive side of the ball. You didn't know which one of them was coming at you. And I think if Arkansas gets to that point to where you don't know where the pressure's coming from,
Mhm.
you're not going to be as predictable like last year and years past. That's going to be another huge advantage for when we look at the defensive side of this ball.
Oh yeah, and I mean, going back to the depth thing too, on defense or offense. I mean, you look at the Alabamas, the Georgias of years past. I mean, you see a guy that gets put in, and the fans don't necessarily know who that guy is, but he comes and shows up and shows, and that's what we're hoping for with the depth that we're hearing about. And whether it's this team or the women's basketball team, whoever, you just hope that if they're coming in. Not just because of an injury, that they're coming in because of whether it's somebody being gassed or just a different look.
Yeah. And that's the most important thing. You don't want the backups in there because of injuries or guys are just gassed. I mean, you're rotating them in there and getting their reps because you start the SEC season with LSU in Baton Rouge. So you got 3 good games to really nail everything down before you get into there. But other than that, Adam, I know it's a little bit quicker than an hour tonight, but having Coach Neighbors and then seeing that question, I mean, it just really got my mind churning on really talking about the day's events. And if we see questions or topics or opinions, what better way to use the platform to really kind of talk about it, discuss it, and get other fans involved. So that's what we're going to kind of start doing on a more of a daily basis or more often time where you can join in on the conversation. Again, we talked about the Monday mailbag. If you have questions, drop them in our DMs. Go on our Facebook page. My email address is there on the Facebook page. Again, we want to hear more from y'all, what your questions are, concerns, or join in on the conversation. Drop your comments. We show them and play them and talk about them. But Adam, you got anything else before we wrap it up?
Oh, I mean, I just think it's a good idea. It's a good plan because, we both have several friends and acquaintances out there in the different media platforms. And I mean, if they pose a question that, really makes you think, let's bring it on and just, get more people's opinion and viewpoints on it. Gets them some more looks and vice versa. Just build those looks and relationships.
Yeah. And going through the proper channels, giving them that credit instead of just sharing.
Now taking it. Yeah, exactly.
You go through the proper channels and make sure that they're cool with, you using their question or as a topic. But tomorrow night, we're going to have Alyssa Orange for Pig Trail Nation on to talk about what she's seen out of this year's football team so far at fall camp. But as for Adam Hall, Porter Hayes, that will do it for tonight's episode of the Hog Talk Podcast, presented to you by Bet Online and Arkansas Brewing Company in Ozark. And we will catch you tomorrow night.